Imagine waking up 50,000 years ago in the Great Rift Valley of Africa, the freezing spruce forests of Ice Age Europe, or the tropical jungles of Southeast Asia. If you walked over the next mountain ridge or crossed into the neighboring river valley, you would not just meet another tribe of your own people. You would run into entirely different species of human beings. Some were towering giants with massive, thick-boned chests, powerful enough to wrestle Ice Age megafauna with their bare hands. Some were tiny, 3-foot-tall island dwellers who hunted miniature elephants in deep subterranean caves. Some possessed brains larger than yours, while others possessed brains the size of an orange, yet still managed to navigate pitch-black underground cave labyrinths. How did Earth go from hosting a magnificent, diverse spectrum of 9 distinct human species to leaving just one solitary ape behind to inherit the entire planet? Who were the 8 forgotten human species that came before us? How did they live? And what biological difference allowed Homo sapiens to survive while every one of our evolutionary cousins vanished into the fossil record? To understand how our crowded human family tree was built and eventually pruned, we must travel back nearly 2.8 million years to the birth of our genus, Homo. Before this moment, our ancestors were Australopithecines, small-brained, ape-like creatures who walked upright on the African savanna, but still spent much of their lives climbing in trees. As the climate of Africa dried out and vast forests transformed into open grasslands, natural selection triggered a radical explosion of evolutionary experimentation. Over the next 2 million years, nature sculpted, tested, and refined 8 distinct human species across Africa, Europe, and Asia. The very first species to officially carry the title of human was Homo habilis, emerging roughly 2.4 million years ago in East and Southern Africa. Known famously to science as the handyman, Homo habilis was first discovered in 1960 at Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania by legendary paleoanthropologists Louis and Mary Leakey. Standing just over 4 feet tall and weighing around 70 pounds, Homo habilis looked very different from modern humans. They possessed long, ape-like arms, a projecting lower face, and a brain volume of roughly 600 cubic centimeters, less than half the size of your modern brain. Yet despite their small stature and primitive appearance, Homo habilis accomplished something that changed the trajectory of life on Earth forever. They invented the world's first formal stone tool industry, known as Oldowan tools. Before Homo habilis, ancestral primates had to rely entirely on their biological teeth and fingernails to acquire food. But Homo habilis learned to pick up hard river cobbles, strike them against quartzite stones at precise angles, and create sharp-edged volcanic flakes. These simple, razor-sharp stone flakes acted as external, detachable teeth. For the first time in primate history, a small, fragile hominin could walk up to the abandoned carcass of a zebra or an antelope and slice through thick hide that biological teeth could never tear. They could also crack open heavy leg bones and feast on the nutrient-dense, fat-rich bone marrow inside. This access to calorie-dense animal marrow served as the high-octane rocket fuel that ignited the explosive growth of the human brain. Homo habilis proved that survival in the wild was no longer just about who had the sharpest biological claws. It was about who could use stone tools to unlock the hidden calories of the savanna. As the brain-expanding benefits of meat and stone tools took hold, nature launched its second and longest-lasting human experiment, Homo erectus. Emerging roughly 1.9 million years ago in East Africa, Homo erectus, or the upright man, was an absolute biological masterpiece. In 1984, near Lake Turkana in Kenya, a research team led by Dr. Richard Leakey and Alan Walker unearthed the nearly complete skeleton of Turkana Boy. It was a young male, Homo erectus, who lived 1.6 million years ago. When scientists examined his bones, they were stunned. Homo erectus had completely discarded the short legs and tree-climbing arms of earlier apes. They possessed long, slender legs, narrow hips, an arched foot, and a barrel-shaped rib cage. They were built for high-efficiency endurance walking and long-distance persistence running under the blazing African sun. Homo erectus was the first human species to break free from the cradle of Africa, expanding across the Middle East, Central Asia, China, and Southeast Asia. At the archaeological site of Dmanisi in the Republic of Georgia, fossils excavated by Dr. David Lord Kipanidze prove that Homo erectus had already conquered Western Asia 1.8 million years ago. But their greatest superpower was not just their running legs. It was their mastery of fire and industrial design. Homo erectus invented the symmetrical Acheulean hand axe, a multi-purpose stone tool that remained the standard piece of human technology for over 1.2 million years. They also became the first human species to control fire, cook raw meat, and keep warm. Homo erectus was so biologically resilient and versatile that they survived on Earth for nearly 2 million years. They lived on tropical Indonesian islands until just about 108,000 years ago. They remain, by far, the longest-lasting human species to ever walk the Earth, surviving nearly 6 times longer than Homo sapiens has existed so far. While Homo erectus was busy conquering the tropical valleys of Asia, a third mysterious human species was pioneering the harsh environments of Western Europe nearly 850,000 years ago. This species was Homo antecessor, meaning the pioneer man. It was discovered in the rich limestone caverns of the Grandolina site in the Sierra de Atapuerca mountains of northern Spain. The team was led by Dr. Juan Luis Arzuaga and Dr. Eudald Carbonell. Homo antecessor presented anthropologists with a shocking anatomical puzzle. While their teeth and heavy brow ridges resembled primitive Homo erectus, their mid-face architecture was astonishingly modern. They possessed sunken cheekbones, a hollowed maxillary bone, and a canine fossa, identical to modern humans living today. Excavations at Grandolina revealed that Homo antecessor were formidable hunters who tracked wild deer, horses, and giant rhinoceroses through the Mediterranean forests. However, the archaeological record also uncovered a dark, brutal reality of their daily survival. When researchers analyzed the fossilized human bones at Grandolina, they found identical cut marks, intentional bone fractures, and peeling patterns to those found on butchered animal remains. Homo antecessor engaged in the earliest documented cannibalism in human prehistory. They consumed the flesh of neighboring human groups and cracked open their skulls to extract the brain matter. Whether driven by severe seasonal starvation or territorial violence, Homo antecessor proved that early human life in Pleistocene Europe was a savage, high-stakes battle. Even your fellow humans could be viewed as potential calories. As the ice ages intensified across the northern hemisphere roughly 600,000 years ago, a fourth human species emerged to dominate both Africa and Europe. This species was Homo heidelbergensis, the Heidelberg man. It was named after the massive lower jaw discovered in Mauer, Germany. The species was further illuminated by the discovery of 32 individuals in the Cima de los Huesos, or Pit of Bones, in Atapuerca, Spain. Homo heidelbergensis was a true biological powerhouse, standing nearly 6 feet tall with wide, heavy shoulders and thick bones. They possessed a brain volume averaging over 1,200 cubic centimeters. That brain size nearly overlapped with modern humans. Homo heidelbergensis was the first human species to routinely hunt the largest and most dangerous megafauna in Europe. At the famous archaeological site of Schöningen in Germany, excavators, led by Dr. Hartmut Thiem, discovered 8 beautifully preserved spruce throwing spears. The spears were about 9 feet long and dated back roughly 300,000 years. They were found directly alongside the butchered remains of dozens of giant Ice Age wild horses. Homo heidelbergensis was not scavenging leftover predator kills from hyenas. They were master big-game hunters who manufactured aerodynamic, weighted wooden javelins and coordinated complex group ambushes. They brought down massive prey through collective physical bravery. Evolutionary biologists widely consider Homo heidelbergensis to be the crucial common ancestor that split into 2 legendary human lineages. The populations that stayed in Africa evolved into Homo sapiens, while the populations that remained in cold Eurasia evolved into the heavy-duty gladiators of the Ice Age, the Neanderthals. This brings us to the 5th, most famous, and most misunderstood human species in history, Homo neanderthalensis. Emerging roughly 400,000 years ago, Neanderthals were the ultimate heavy-duty survival machines of Pleistocene Eurasia. For centuries, popular culture depicted them as knuckle-dragging, stupid cavemen. But groundbreaking research over the last 2 decades, spearheaded by scholars like Dr. Jean-Jacques Hublin at the Max Planck Institute, has revealed an extraordinarily sophisticated and intelligent species. Neanderthals were biological tanks. An average male stood about 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighed nearly 180 pounds of dense, solid muscle. They possessed broad, barrel-shaped chests that housed massive lungs capable of pumping huge amounts of oxygen through freezing, below-zero air. Their skulls featured prominent brow ridges and large nasal cavities designed to warm, dry Arctic air. Their brain volumes averaged around 1,500 cubic centimeters, significantly larger than the average modern human brain. Archaeological discoveries from sites like Shanidar Cave in Iraq and Gorham's Cave in Gibraltar prove that Neanderthals buried their dead with care. They adorned themselves with eagle talons and black feathers, created geometric cave art, and used medicinal plants like chamomile and poplar bark to soothe pain. They also manufactured the world's first synthetic superglue by distilling birch bark pitch under oxygen-deprived campfires. Neanderthals were apex predators who stood face-to-face with woolly mammoths. They survived brutal physical traumas that matched the injury profiles of modern professional rodeo riders. While Neanderthals were ruling the cold forests of Europe, a sixth mysterious human species was quietly dominating the vast landscapes of Central and East Asia. They were the Denisovans. Unlike other ancient humans, who were discovered through massive skull fossils, the Denisovans were discovered through a revolutionary triumph of ancient genetics. In 2010, Nobel laureate Dr. Svante Pääbo and his team at the Max Planck Institute extracted ancient DNA from a tiny fossilized pinky bone fragment. The fragment was found in Denisova Cave in the Altai Mountains of Siberia. When they sequenced the genome, they discovered that it belonged to an entirely distinct, previously unknown human lineage. This lineage had split from Neanderthals hundreds of thousands of years ago. Subsequent discoveries included the massive Xiaohe mandible, found on the high-altitude Tibetan plateau by Dr. Fahu Chen and Dr. Jean-Jacques Hublin. These discoveries revealed that Denisovans were physically massive humans adapted to survive in extreme, oxygen-depleted alpine environments. They possessed a unique genetic mutation in the EPAS1 gene. This gene regulates the production of red blood cells in thin, high-altitude air without thickening the blood dangerously. Denisovans roamed from the freezing Siberian mountains all the way down to the tropical rainforests of Southeast Asia and the island continent of Sahul. They left a profound genetic footprint across the entire Asian continent. Just when scientists thought the human family tree was complete, nature revealed a seventh mind-boggling human species that sounded like something out of a fantasy novel. This species was Homo floresiensis, affectionately nicknamed Hobbit. In 2003, an Australian and Indonesian archaeological team led by Dr. Mike Morwood and Dr. Raden Suejono, was excavating the limestone cave of Liang Bua on the remote Indonesian island of Flores. Deep in the cave sediments, they uncovered the nearly complete skeleton of an adult female human who lived 60,000 years ago. She stood only 3 feet 6 inches tall and weighed barely 65 pounds. She possessed a brain volume of just 400 cubic centimeters, roughly the size of a grapefruit and comparable to a wild chimpanzee. For decades, skeptics argued that Homo floresiensis was simply a diseased modern human suffering from microcephaly or genetic dwarfism. But subsequent fossil discoveries and detailed anatomical scans proved that they were a genuine, distinct human species that evolved through insular dwarfism. An ancestral population of Homo erectus became trapped on the predator-free, resource-limited island of Flores nearly 1 million years ago. Over generations, natural selection shrank their body size so they could survive on a limited caloric budget. Despite their tiny brains, Homo floresiensis made sophisticated stone tools and hunted giant Komodo dragons and miniature stegodon elephants. They also used fire to cook their food inside deep caves. They survived peacefully on their isolated island until roughly 50,000 years ago. The eighth and most recent addition to our forgotten family tree was discovered in 2013, deep inside the Rising Star cave system near Johannesburg, South Africa. This species was Homo naledi. The project was led by renowned paleoanthropologist Dr. Lee Berger from the University of the Witwatersrand. A team of slender female excavators squeezed through a treacherous vertical chute only about 7 inches wide. They moved through total darkness to reach the remote Dinaledi chamber. There, they uncovered over 1,500 fossil hominin bones, belonging to at least 15 individuals. The bones dated back roughly 300,000 years. Homo naledi presented a bizarre mosaic of primitive and modern traits. They had modern human-like hands and curved feet adapted for upright walking. But their shoulders, hips, and tiny 500 cubic centimeter brains resembled ancient Australopithecines from 3 million years earlier. Even more controversial were the findings published by Dr. Berger's team. They suggested that Homo naledi deliberately navigated pitch-black underground cave systems while carrying fire torches. The team also suggested that they buried their deceased family members in deep, inaccessible subterranean chambers. Homo naledi proved that complex cultural behaviors and deep emotional care were not exclusive to species with massive, expanded brains. Now, let us reconstruct a breathtaking, high-stakes moment from 45,000 years ago, when the Earth stood at the absolute climax of human diversity. Imagine you are standing on a rocky hill in the Altai Mountains of Central Asia during a crisp, late summer twilight. To the west, across the pine-covered river valley, smoke rises from a Neanderthal camp. Broad-shouldered hunters are roasting ibex meat over a birch pitch hearth. To the east, walking along a high mountain ridge, a group of tall, massive jowled Denisovan hunters steps through the alpine grass. They carry heavy wooden spears tipped with polished stone blades. Down in the valley basin, near a winding river bend, a small band of early Homo sapiens, your direct ancestors, is pitching light tents made of cured horsehide. These three distinct species of humans are not just looking at each other from a distance. They are meeting, interacting, and sharing their lives. In 2018, geneticists analyzing a 90,000-year-old bone fragment from Denisova Cave discovered Denny. Denny was a first-generation hybrid teenager whose mother was a full Neanderthal and whose father was a full Denisovan. Ancient humans were meeting at the geographical crossroads of the world. They were having children together and merging their evolutionary stories under the same starlit sky. So why did this magnificent world of diverse human species come to a sudden, crashing end? Why are you the only species left standing today? Why did Homo sapiens inherit the Earth, while all 8 other human species vanished into extinction between 50,000 and 30,000 years ago? The traditional view was that Homo sapiens were physically superior or possessed higher raw intelligence, but modern science has completely shattered that arrogant view. Neanderthals had larger brains than we did. Homo erectus was physically more resilient. Denisovans were better adapted to high altitudes. The secret superpower that allowed Homo sapiens to conquer the world was not raw individual muscle or individual brain volume. It was our unique cognitive ability for large-scale, flexible social cooperation driven by symbolic communication. While Neanderthals and Denisovans lived in tiny, isolated family groups of 10 to 15 people, who rarely traded with strangers, Homo sapiens developed something different. We developed an expanded parietal and frontal brain architecture that allowed us to create and believe in shared abstract fictions. These included mythologies, ancestral legends, artistic styles, and regional trade partnerships. The famous social brain research of Professor Robin Dunbar at the University of Oxford explored the cognitive capacity of human social networks. Homo sapiens possessed the cognitive capacity to maintain stable social networks of more than 150 individuals. These networks linked dozens of distant bands across hundreds of miles. When the climate of the Ice Age entered a period of violent and unpredictable volatility, known as Dansgaard-Oeschger events, local ecosystems could collapse. Animal populations could vanish within a single generation. The isolated family bands of Neanderthals, Denisovans, and Homo floresiensis were trapped when starvation struck their specific valley. They had no one to call for help. But when a Homo sapiens band faced a catastrophic winter, they could mobilize vast regional trade networks. They migrated hundreds of miles into the territories of allied tribes. These were tribes with whom they had exchanged shell beads, flint, and marriage partners for generations. We did not survive because we were stronger individuals. We survived because we were an interconnected, global team. Yet our 8 ancient cousins did not vanish into total nothingness. They live on inside you at this very moment. When Svante Pääbo sequenced the ancient genomes, he proved that virtually every living person on Earth today, whose ancestors originated outside sub-Saharan Africa, carries between 1 and 2% Neanderthal DNA in their cells. Indigenous populations across East Asia, Papua New Guinea, and Australia carry up to 4 to 6% Denisovan DNA. The high-altitude adaptation gene that allows modern Tibetan people to live comfortably at 14,000 feet without altitude. Sickness was inherited directly from Denisovan ancestors. The genes that regulate your skin healing, your immune system's ability to destroy deadly modern viruses, and your body's fat metabolism during cold weather are living gifts passed down from those ancient hominin gladiators.